I'm going to get started. It's 3 o'clock and I know people are joining. I want to welcome everybody back to our webinars. And today we are so excited to welcome Tara Mardigan, who many of you know. She was our nutritionist when we were back at the Longwood office, back in the days when the Red Sox were winning the World Series, which was a long time ago. And at that time, Tara was part-time with the Red Sox and part-time with us. And she has since moved on to Brooklyn, where she has a private practice doing nutrition coaching virtually. And she also works for a nonprofit helping people with HIV and drug addiction cook more healthfully and shop at farmers markets. So Tara is thriving and living in Brooklyn, New York. And we asked her to join us again to talk about something called intuitive eating, because I know we've had so many webinars about nutrition. We've talked about intermittent fasting and we've talked about sports nutrition. And today, intuitive eating kind of encompasses a non-diet approach to eating healthfully, tuning into your body's signals. And I'll let Tara talk more about it. And we will, as always, save time at the end for questions and answers. So I would ask you all to please submit your questions to the Q&A. And we'll have lots of time at the end for interaction. So without further ado, Tara, welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Lewis. I first want to start off by just saying I miss Boston. I miss the people in Boston, especially, including you, and want to thank you for inviting me to talk today. Sydney, for all your help with setting this up, and Dr. Hedgepeth, I hope I didn't screw up your last name, but thank you also for inviting me today. So I'm going to talk for about hopefully 20 minutes, and then I would really just like to open it up to Q&A and see, you know, how people are thinking about this topic. Some people, this might be a brand new topic, and some may have had some experience. So I'm curious to hear about what people are thinking in general. Okay, so what is intuitive eating? I do want to start off by letting you know that I will be referencing basically the intuitive eating books that are out there that are written by two dietitians, Evelyn Tribole and excuse me, Elise Resch. So these are books that are available from Amazon, from your bookstore, and they're excellent. I use the intuitive eating workbook often when I'm working with clients. So it's a fun approach to this. And I just wanted to start off by saying that's what I will be referencing a lot. So what is intuitive eating? Intuitive eating is a non-diet approach to eating that emphasizes internal cues over external diet rules. If you think of how often we are told what we should eat and what we shouldn't eat, this sort of flips that and takes everybody out of the equation except for you for the most part. So you're probably thinking, well, I don't know if this is going to work for me. That's what a lot of people think right away. Intuitive eating promotes health-enhancing behaviors, a better body image, and a healthier relationship with food. It helps you get back in touch with internal cues such as hunger and fullness. So whenever I'm working with clients, they just tell me what to eat and I'll eat it. I hear that all the time, but really that's not what you need. What you do need is to be able to tap into some of the internal cues that you've been missing or not listening to, which happens to all of us. So the funny thing is we start out pretty good at this. If you look at babies and toddlers, they're the best intuitive eaters that are out there. They eat when they're hungry, or they cry when they're hungry, and they stop when they're full. And then somewhere along the way, we get all this messaging that screws this beautiful picture up. But babies have this down pat. We have to go back and get back to that stage. Next, I just want to go through, there are 10 principles to intuitive eating, and a principle is not a rule, so you can't mess this up. It's something that's just a guideline. And again, there's not a rigid rule. You don't have to follow these in order, but I do want to spend the next 20 minutes going through what the rules are, or excuse me, what the principles are. So the first one is rejecting the diet mentality. You might think, well, I don't really diet, or I'm not on a diet. But this diet mentality is really, it's very common, and it's in places that you might not even think. So have you ever asked, well, I can't have such and such food because it's too high in fat, calories, sodium. How many calories is in whatever item? It's past 7 p.m., so I shouldn't eat. I can't have a snack yet because I just had breakfast an hour ago. This is all the dieting mentality. And these are just some examples that even if you're not on a diet, it's very pervasive. Okay. So how often, people are keeping track of every single, every single food that they eat, or trying to. That's the diet mentality. Checking your weight every day, unless you have a medical condition where the doctor tells you that you need to be checking your weight, it's really not necessary. So this is another tool of the dieting mentality. Okay. If we look a little bit at behaviors and beliefs, it's very common to think of a behavior such as binge eating, emotional eating, restricting, counting macros, eating clean, going on a juice cleanse to detoxify. These are all behaviors of the diet mentality. If we think of the beliefs that are related to that, well, my weight determines my health. If I'm at a good weight, then my health is good. I have the power and the willpower to control my set point weight. And through diet and exercise, good health is guaranteed. These are beliefs that are part of that dieting mentality, that diet mentality. And I really like this quote from Rachel Hartley, who's also a dietitian. She said, "Changing behaviors is easy. Scratch that. It's easier compared to changing beliefs." So real change comes in when we change our beliefs. Making decisions on how to take care of our body and mind become easy. So this is really important, because a lot of times when people are working with me, they are like, I can't let go of dieting. I'll eat everything. But really, when you change your mindset around the core belief of how to best nourish your body, then that's where you make some progress. So I urge all of you to take 12 minutes, I think it is, and Google this at some point. And really, if it's just a very interesting look at why dieting doesn't work from a neuroscientist. But don't worry, she doesn't speak in very, terribly scientific words. It's excellent. And I think it lends itself to this discussion. So the dieting mindset, we see it everywhere. You might not even be aware. Some of these are very obvious. These are some, and this is an article that was in a women's health magazine. These foods are going to become your new best friends forever. Just the language behind all this is very in that diet mentality, diet mindset. So I do want to share this example of something that happened very recently. A friend of mine reached out and she was very upset. She is a runner, and she said, I think I'm not going to do the Prospect Park turkey trot this year. And I thought, well, because it's virtual, I wasn't sure what she was getting at. And she forwarded me this email that was from Prospect Park Track Club, which is a well-respected club in Brooklyn and in New York City. And so she is someone who is working on her relationship with food and her body image and body. And this was very triggering to her. So it's not even obvious. A lot of people would just read this as a typical banter of a holiday, trying to get people to exercise. But for her, it actually made her not inspired to run, not inspired to do this race, and really just wanted to, forget about it. And so I bring this up because this is still that dieting mentality. It's really everywhere. the second principle of intuitive eating is honoring your hunger. What does that mean? If you think of, sorry for these, sorry for this picture. It's nobody that I know, just so you know. These are from Canva. So, but if you are, let's say you're in a meeting or you're riding your bike or doing something and you have to go to the bathroom, you're on a road trip, you're going to stop and you're going to do what you have to do to take care of yourself. Same thing if you're, let's say you feel like your heartbeat is, your heart is beating rapidly, you're going to do something to take care of yourself. You're going to slow down, you're going to relax, you're going to call Dr. Lewis, whatever it is, we take care of these needs that we have. That is called interoceptive awareness. And this is very much part of intuitive eating. That's why I wanted to just show you some visuals. Your bladder's full, you take care of yourself. Your heart is racing, you work towards calming it down. But what about hunger and satiety? These are sort of left in the, we ignore this. When we're hungry, we just keep working, or we're distracted. And the same thing with fullness and satiety, we just keep eating. So these are, both hunger and satiety are also part of that interoceptive awareness that we just seem to blow through. And intuitive eating really works at trying to tap into these cues and help you bring them back so that you're aware of them. An example of how you can best nourish yourself is not letting yourself go too long without eating. I know you guys just had it sounds like a webinar on intermittent fasting. Aside from that, generally, you just want to make sure that you are eating pretty regularly and you're figuring out what works best for your body. Used this, I pulled it up knowing that it was primarily a Boston crowd, but I used to use this with the Boston Red Sox in that I would encourage the guys to try to get something from each category every time they ate, because a lot of times they would just eat lots of protein and they wouldn't have the other nutrients. So for example, making sure that you're getting or trying to get some produce, some good color on the plate, some carbohydrates for energy, some protein, healthy fat, and fluid. Now, again, this doesn't have to be perfect every time, but this is a good way to nourish the body. And then if you're able to do that regularly with the timing that works for you, then you're probably going to prevent yourself from becoming too hungry or too full. Okay, the third principle is making peace with food. I hear so often that, people will say to me, I can't have chocolate. I can't have it because I won't stop eating it. And intuitive eating really works at trying so that you give yourself unconditional permission to eat. There are no conditions on food. It's not good or bad. It really is something that you are able to eat, and how to do so in a way that is nourishing to your body. So the fourth principle is challenging the food police, which this one's really important because there are a lot of food police. You might even think that I'm the food police because of my profession, but I try not to be. My job is really to meet you where you're at and work together so that we can help improve your nutrition, but not, I would never tell anybody not to eat anything. So this phrase right here is part of how you can challenge the food police. So when someone says something to you like you must do this, or you shouldn't do that, or you're eating too fast, or your carbohydrates make you fat, all these things that we hear, using the words "for the most part" gives yourself permission to have a little wiggle room with what it is that you believe or want to work on. So it really does have a lot to do with the language. Okay, principle 5 is feeling your fullness. I really like this one. I think this one's really important. So here is a useful mindful eating exercise from Mark David, who wrote a great book called Nourishing Wisdom. I have been using this book for many, many years. Ask yourself, am I hungry? Will food satisfy my hunger? What will truly nourish me in this moment? And do I choose to eat? So what you're doing with this exercise is you're actually making a choice. You're either going to eat something or you're not, and you're accepting it fully. So, this mindful eating exercise goes along with intuitive eating, because you're asking yourself, am I truly hungry? Trust yourself to eat the foods that you desire, not what people tell you, and listen to the signals that you are no longer hungry. So that it takes a long time to get used to, but some of the signals that you're no longer hungry, I mean, there's some obvious physical ones where you feel full, you feel stuffed. That's an uncomfortable feeling. It's finding that fine line of, okay, I feel like this food was very satisfying and I'm done, even if there's still food left on the plate, which is very different from how a lot of us were raised when we were young, where you have to clean your plate. Principle 6 is discovering the satisfaction factor with food. I think we tend to think food is nutrition only, and there's a lot of, you have to eat certain foods so that you get X nutrition from it, but we tend to forget that food is one of life's greatest pleasures, and that we have to really enjoy that. When you eat what you really want in an environment that is inviting, the pleasure you derive will be a powerful force in helping you feel satisfied and content. So that, I think it just comes to mind when I think of something like a low-fat cheese or a skim milk. For me, I would just keep eating and eating and eating, because it didn't taste how I wanted it to taste. I didn't enjoy it. It just didn't have the right mouth feel. So there is a lot to be said for satisfaction when you're eating. I'm going to show you an example of a moment that I had that makes me think of this very fondly. This was from August of 2010. And I rented a Zip car. I was in Boston at the time. I think, was I working at Lown? Not yet. But I rented a Zip car and I went to Craftsbury, Vermont, which is up in the Northeast Kingdom of Vermont, to go to a dinner in the field with a bunch of strangers. So it's called Outstanding in the Field. And this was the first time I had ever done anything like this, but it was a farm to table dinner, and I went by myself. So my friends all thought I was crazy, but I had one of the best, most memorable meals that I will probably ever have in my life. And you can see why. So we were eating in a field of buckwheat that they plowed a strip of buckwheat so that we could set up this table. But what's memorable is this gentleman and his wife. So Matteo Keller and his wife were sitting across from me, and we ate probably a 6-course meal with everything from the farm or from right around the local area. And this gentleman was the cheese farmer. And his cheese was on this salad that I was like, really, really, it just was so good. And for some reason, now that's like the only blue cheese I can eat is Bailey Hayes and Blue. But it's because of this fond memory that I had, where this was so good and it was so important that I was learning about what was going, what went into this food. And I think, if you look at the nutrition facts, my God, blue cheese is so high in fat and high in sodium, and you shouldn't eat it and this and that. No, you should enjoy food like this, because it's something that doesn't come along all the time. And you should have, if I could have it every day, I probably would. It's just hard for me to find. But I use that as an example of just really, we can't have meals like this all the time, but we can get closer to having more satisfaction when we are eating. And that could be as simple as making, making your dinner table your dinner table. Right now, my dinner table is my office space. So a lot of times when I'm eating dinner, I forget that I still have all my work and my computer right there. And I have to like try to really to shut that down. So principle 7 is coping with your feelings without using food. And there are a lot of emotional attachments to eating. So here are some common triggers for eating: anxiety, boredom, bribery, celebration, emptiness, excitement, loneliness, depression, procrastination. These are all emotional triggers so that for some people, just eat. That is very common. And with intuitive eating, it works on making sure that you're not using food as this crutch all the time for these emotional triggers. How can you better take care of yourself and not automatically use food as the crutch? So what I do when I'm working with clients is I have come up with this, I call it just 5. So these are the areas: stillness, movement, nourishment, community, and self-care, where when I'm working with the client, I set goals in these areas. And I think I have included, this was just one the other day from a young woman where, for her, what she does is she writes it down in a notebook and then, or on a Post-it, and like posts it close by so that she sees it. But she wanted to work on increasing her water, getting outside for 30 minutes, 10 minutes of stillness, 30 minutes of TikTok. You can tell she's young. And for her goal for others is to text a friend, and this is something she's going to work on each day. But this is having a more holistic approach to health, I think, is very helpful with controlling some of those triggers. So if you can send a note to a friend, snail mail, it may have a very powerful effect on your well-being, your overall well-being, and then you may be less likely to do some of the emotional eating that is very common. So it's all connected. Principle 8 is respecting your body. This one is hard for a lot of people, and sadly, but there's so many times when people are just very, I need to lose 40 pounds. I'm so mad. I'm so fat. I'm so heavy. I'm so lots of, not thanking their body for what it does do. But accepting your genetics is part of it. And that takes a long time for a lot of people. Having gratitude for the things that you are able to do, practicing respectful behaviors such as eating well, sleeping, exercising. Stop comparing yourself to others. That's really tough for many people, especially with social media. And altering the language you choose that you're using. So this is a photo from my walking group in East Harlem. And this is a really important example of one of the things that I work on with this group is really watching their language. So the gentleman that's next to me stopped coming for a while, and I said, "Why haven't you been coming? I'm confused because you're the walking captain and I need you to be there." And he shared with me that people told him that he looked like he was pregnant because of his belly, and just very hurtful things. And so I had a little chit chat with the whole group, and I said, we are going to elevate our language because that is not okay. And that was really helpful to him. But he had to start believing it. And what was great was that once people understood sort of the ground rules about what we were going to say about not only each other's bodies, but our own, and be more thankful and more appreciative of being able to be outside, and be able to be together, then it really was we clicked, I would say. This is a picture from last year. The woman that's in the mask had just had, she's amazing. She had just had dental surgery and we couldn't believe she showed up. But in case you're wondering, if this was pre-COVID, so she does have a mask on, but none of us were, we weren't thinking in terms of masks at that. But so I do encourage people to not only elevate their language of their own bodies, but, you know, just being mindful of what you're saying to other people. So principle 9 is exercise, feeling the difference. Really finding exercise that is beneficial to your body, and that may be very different from what what you're reading you should be doing, or what perhaps even a health provider is telling you should be doing. Really listening to what feels good in your body. Like, it might be that you think you should be running 5 days a week, but maybe running twice a week, or walking instead, and, you know, taking Thursday morning to sleep in. Like, really listening to how you are feeling is important. A good place to start is to pay attention to how often you're sitting, especially now with people working more from home. I mean, myself included, I realize how much I spent commuting and walking around the office and the different facilities. And now it's just, I'm exercising in the morning and then I sit. So really trying to change that pattern by getting up periodically and moving around. That's really helpful. So, and it's true, the average person is sitting more than they're sleeping, which is pretty scary. And last, but certainly not least, is honoring your health with what's called gentle nutrition. So, and this really ties back into the pleasure, making food choices that honor your health and are good for you, but also that your taste buds like, and make you feel good. So, you're going to find those foods better than anybody else can, right? So, you know, if it includes foods that are, you know, not supposed to be in the healthy category, then whoops, that's okay too. I tend to say, you know, for athletes, for example, the highest performing athletes that I've worked with are those that have more of an 80-20 mentality, or even a 70-30 mentality, where the majority of what they're eating is pretty healthy. But even within the same day, they may have things that, you know, are, dark chocolate or wine, or whatever it is that you know, read from dieting mentality that shouldn't be. You can't have that. That's not clean. That's not good. Well, I don't believe in that. So there is room for everything. It's just in context and trying to gain traction with a pattern that's very healthy. So I am happy to share more about what I do, if anyone has questions about that. But a lot of the work that I do in my private practice now does involve a lot of work in the intuitive eating area. So if you are someone that's interested in a meal plan, I'm not the dietitian for you. I'm not going to tell you what to eat. I'm going to work with you on figuring out how you can tap into your internal cues better, so that you can nourish yourself in a way that works best for you. Here are a few resources, and I believe that you also have some of these written down. And there is a link that Sydney put together that is a complimentary 15-minute check-in with me, like just if you had questions about how I work. I welcome that. And that can be done either by phone or by Zoom, which is what my private practice software uses. So just be patient with me, because I think after having having this webinar, maybe we will get I will get quite a few requests. So if you just be patient, especially through Thanksgiving, I will be happy to help you. So Dr. Lewis, are there questions?
Oh, Tara, you're muted, but that was wonderful, Tara.
Sorry.
Thank you so much.
I've unmuted. I'm sorry. That was an amateur role here. Yeah, thank you so much, Tara. Such wisdom coming out of your mouth. And I feel like we've heard so many different things from many different nutritionists and dietitians, and even from our own doctors. But really the bottom line is to honor your body and to look at the big picture and the big goal, which is really health and vitality, and not what the scale tells you. So I think it's scary for a lot of people. And I wonder, just to start with, how long would you recommend someone take this approach before deciding if they can do it or not? Because as you said, so many people are afraid. You open that door a little bit and they're just going to go out of control and eat so much and gain 50 pounds. So do you give it a week, 2 weeks? How long does that take?
Yeah. That's a great question. I mean, I hate to tell you, but it takes a long time. And it's not work that what's nice about this is that it's not like a diet where you're on or off. If you need to take a break, take a step back. That's fine. I've had people that I work with where we're working through the workbook together and making really good progress. And then it's, I need to keep track. I need to keep track of my afternoons till my evening. Okay, fine. You don't fail if you still tiptoe back into old behaviors and patterns. So I would encourage people to just have an open mind and to really, but give it a shot. Like, if you're going to do this, there's some questions in the workbook that are pretty tough. Rather than, I know, how many times have you ever worked through a workbook and you're like, oh, I'll come back to this. Make the time, dedicate the time, answer the questions. There's an exercise in there I should have started with. I can actually do it with everybody right now, but write down on a piece of paper a sentence with your non-dominant hand. Everybody try it. Like, for me, it's my left hand, and I'm going to write my name, and it comes out incredibly shaky, as it should, because guess what? I don't write with that hand. It's the same thing. It's going to take time until if you do it every day, you're going to get better at it. So I don't know how to answer that with like a 2-week, 3-week. That's why when I work with people, I really work on like the incremental goals of, we're going to pick one thing to work on from each category, and that's it. So the goal might be, okay, I would like to have, I don't want to, I want to get rid of soda or something. Well, then we're going to work on that in a way that we're not going to worry about anything else. And that's scary for a lot of people. They're like, but I'm eating French fries and McDonald's and this. I don't care. We're working on that one thing. And what usually happens is there's a trickle down effect and you start improving in other areas too. So I have faith that it works. I've seen it work. But it is very different from how we are used to living in society with regards to food and nutrition. Yes.
There's a question about which book has the workbook in it. Is that on your list here?
Yeah. So let me go back. So the workbook it's in that first bullet point. So there's intuitive eating and then the intuitive eating workbook.
Oh, okay. So it's in the intuitive eating workbook.
Yeah. Yeah.
Try that. Okay. Awesome. Great. And then actually maybe in a few minutes, stop the share so we can see you better.
I can do that now.
Okay. Awesome. All right. So there's 2 questions in the chat that are sort of related. And the first person says, I find I can keep eating and never feel as if I'm full. What can I do? And the second person says, do your clients actually lose weight with this method? It feels so undisciplined.
Great question. Okay. So let's start with the first one. Maybe I'll start with the second one. So I'll start off by saying that a lot of clients that I work with this, I tell them to get rid of their scales. So I have no clue if they've lost weight. That right there sometimes shuts the front door on them wanting to work with me. But the ones that do, I can tell that they're living life more healthfully. And to me, that's what's important. So I know they're exercising more. I know they're improving their eating habits, but I don't know necessarily the number on the scale. That's for when you go to the doctor once a year, twice a year, 3 times a year. That, to me, that's what I try to do. So I can't really answer that. I would venture to say overall, yes, I do believe it can help with weight loss, but that's not what you should go into it thinking. What was the first question? I'm sorry.
I find I can keep eating and never feel as if I'm full. What can I do?
Yeah, that's common. And it gets back to a lot of the other things that are non-eating in your life. What are you doing when you're eating? You know, that's one question I would have. Usually when you just can keep eating, it's because you're distracted, with regards to maybe there's something very stressful, maybe you're not sleeping well. Like if we can chip away at some of the other stuff, you can then say, okay, actually I'm satisfied. This food is good. I am good. I can put the rest away, and some days are great and some days are not. And that's okay too. That's the other thing. You really have permission to mess this up. It's okay.
Yeah, no, that's so important. And I think the other question is, what does it mean to feel full? Maybe you don't feel stuffed, but you might feel satisfied. You might no longer feel hungry. You might feel ready to carry on with your day.
Yeah.
Because, you know, and I think for many of our patients, they have heart disease, and there's other things we're trying to get at with food besides a scale that shows weight loss. Because as you point out, if someone wants to lose weight, maybe you're not the person they're going to call. Right. But if someone wants to be more healthful, maybe you're the perfect person to call.
Right. But I do think that, because I've been a dietitian 25 years. I've been through the whole dieting thing as a professional. You know, like I was trained that, you know, you have somebody who has heart disease, you have somebody who has, they need to lose weight, then here's what they should be, their BMI, this is how many calories they have. But that's just not always the way life works. That's what's tricky about this. And I think you're starting to see a shift in the profession. You're starting to see a shift in the nutrition profession to say, guess what? People aren't getting any healthier, for one, and they are not losing weight, or if they do lose weight, they gain it back.
Yes.
So it's not working. It's not helping their cardiac picture. It's not, if anything, it's worse, because yes, this ongoing cycle of loss and gain is probably worse than staying relatively the same.
No, it's definitely
healthier.
Worse.
Yeah.
No, and we've seen that. The research shows that the yo-yos in weight are much worse than just staying where you're at, even if that weight is higher than ideal.
Without a doubt. Yep.
Okay. Well, so, you know, it comes back to the relationship with food, which is a lifelong relationship that we're all going to have. We can't, you know, some people who say you have an addiction issue with alcohol, and you can get rid of that out of your life and never have to look at it, but you have to eat. And so every time you eat, if it opens up this can of worms, it's very complicated. So getting to that root relationship.
Yeah. And I think also having permission to say, some of the stuff that I heard in the past just doesn't serve me now, you know. And it's not that people were not well-meaning. I think everybody who enters the wellness space or the health space is generally, like 99% of people are very well-meaning.
Yes.
It's just that we're now learning more effective ways to help people help themselves. So
important. And I always also, except for my heart failure patients, when we're following a scale because it's water weight that moves quickly. Right. For patients who are looking for health, I agree. Don't step on the scale. That's not what's the goal. And you shouldn't feel great because the number went down, or feel bad because the number went up. We want you to feel better when you feel better.
Right.
And that comes from honoring your body. And it's the intuitive eating. It goes along with intuitive movement and intuitive sleeping and intuitive drinking water. And just, I love the analogy to toddlers who do all that. They're sleepy, they fall asleep. Us, we're sleepy, we power through it and we read and we do our email.
Yeah.
The whole thing gets all screwy, especially now in this very stressful time.
Yep. And sleep has so much to do with how you eat, right? So back to the question that the person had about how I can't seem to ever become full. Perhaps sleep is something that is worth looking into, which is also really hard to fix. It's not something that gets fixed overnight. It's something that, for me, my days are long. They're usually pretty active in the morning and then at night. And then I'm like, oh gosh, I should be going to bed. What has been helpful for me is I set a nighttime alarm, which sounds crazy, but 9 o'clock comes, I have an alarm that's like, you better get your act together because it's time to start winding down. And it's been really helpful because I'm up at 5 a.m. I lead exercise groups a couple days a week outside. And if I blow through that alarm, then I can tell you the whole next day is shot as far as how I feel. I show up, I present myself, I do the work, I do what I have to do, but I am like a shell of myself. So for me, sleep is critically important to be able to do what I want to do.
Yes. All right. I can see Allison is dying to ask a question.
I am so dying to have a conversation. No, I love everything you've said. And I love the idea of doing the personal assessment, right? To really understand your motivation. Mm-hmm. And this is such an important time that, we're living through this crazy pandemic where we're all thinking about food differently because we're in our house more, we're probably cooking more, and then we're probably self-medicating more with a lot of those comfort foods. So I really like this approach. There's some questions about that hunger and satiety. And I personally find that so loaded and difficult to assess in myself. So I know that really is a question, for most people. How do you really make those assessments? And how do you have permission to enjoy the social aspect, even if you're not hungry at that mealtime, or, you could always eat, so you don't want to have the meal when you're hungry and then another meal when you have, maybe, time with your family. Yeah. Any words of advice? Or
I think, we tend to think of we start assessing hunger and satiety when we're actually eating the meal. I try to do it beforehand when I'm making the meal. I sort of have this game plan in my mind of like, okay, what flavor can I try today that's different? Like I think of it in terms of, I really tie it to satisfaction. And it's hard to pinpoint, but it's also, again, I'm really not sometimes hungry, but I can tell when I'm stressed at work. I stand up and I go to the kitchen, which is different because before we would stand up in our office and maybe walk down the hall and come back. But now the food is right here,
Absolutely.
So it is also a very different and challenging time, but I think it's a really good time to practice some of this, like checking in on hunger and satiety. And for me, like, I know when I'm really hungry, like it's clear, it's time to eat. You've heard of hangry, where you're like hungry and angry. When I hit that, that's when I'm hungry. Otherwise I'm probably I need to just have a better game plan. And for me, it's the organization behind it. So,
planning is really important.
Planning is important, but it's, then you can think, okay, well, planning feels like diet, you have to plan when you're on a diet. I don't think there's anything wrong with, getting your getting your game plan ready for the next day. I don't think that's dieting. I think just having a plan of what may best nourish my body for what is about to come. Like, I mean, most people have a general sense as to what their day is going to have and hold. So having, you know, it's like if it's raining outside, you're not going to leave without a raincoat. So just being as best prepared as you can, and then also having the flexibility within whatever chaos goes on to say, you know, so eating without distraction, I think, can help you pay attention to that hunger cue, and satiety for sure. I mean, the Japanese do it really well. They know how to stop when they're not yet full. It's something that's very, you know, we're not used to doing that in America. So,
and maybe any practical words of advice, since, you know, next week is the eating holiday, and you know, some of us might, you know, feel more stress, you know, because we're not with extended family or loved ones, and that might also be driving maybe some choices that we wouldn't otherwise make.
yeah, I mean, I'm stressed about the thought of getting on a train to go see my family. I guess I just got a text message that New York City schools are closed, so I don't have to worry about it because I don't have a child, but it's a very stressful time. I would say enjoy what you have, you know, just this is not a time to say, okay, well, I had mashed potatoes and turnips and gravy, so I'm going to, you know, I'm going to need to do X amount of exercise. Just let go of that whole mentality. I mean, focus on the good stuff that we do have. So.
I love that. Thanksgiving, right? Let's be grateful for what we have. There's two questions again that are related. So people who have medical conditions, say pre-diabetes or coronary artery disease, and do have to be somewhat mindful about what foods they should avoid. Do you have any advice for how to do this intuitive eating when there are some restrictions?
Yeah. I mean, I think that people think, and I'm afraid it's hard to give the elevator pitch on intuitive eating without people thinking that they can just like toss caution to the wind and eat whatever they want. Well, I don't think that that's what this means. What it means is finding out the foods that, first of all, foods that are going to make you feel good, right? So that may be a different food from what your doctor tells you you should eat. And it's really finding that balance between, okay, these are foods that I know are healthy and health promoting and are part of my cardiac, you know, recommendation list. And then these are the foods that I was told I shouldn't eat. And if it's something that is like really, really not going to help the cardiac picture, for example, then you have to work with somebody on trying to figure out how to work that in a safe way. Usually people don't end up missing it too much, or if you find a replacement, like sodium is a big example that I would say educating somebody on how to flavor their favorite foods with really good spices and spice blends, and making that shift and not thinking so much about things you can't have, but things that you can have in a way that may be different from how you've ever had it. And actually, you might even be taking another step in really promoting your health by adding in some other good nutrition. So
I like the focus on what you can have. So for pre-diabetes, for example, avoiding simple carbohydrates and focusing on, when you do have carbohydrates, make sure that they're complex, make sure they're paired with a fat or a protein so that you can still have pretty much all the things you want to have, but making sure you eat them in the right combinations would be important.
I mean, I have someone that I've been working with recently who he would have, he has a very, very healthy diet, but he was eating lots of fruit at night. And I said, okay, rather than have you not have fruit at night, why don't we try to have, we're going to try to have less fruit at one time, you know, so instead you're going to have exactly the same amount. I just want you to spread it out differently. And when you do have it at night, I want you to to put a little bit of olive oil with it and maybe a little bit of spices or cinnamon, and he's feeling so much better, and his glycemic control is better. You know, the morning blood sugar is totally improved, and he said, I'm doing exactly the same thing. I just switched the timing a bit, and the adding a little bit of the healthy fat was really, you know, we used olive oil just because it was the one thing that he consistently has in the house, you know, and just drizzle it on. It's a very Mediterranean thing to do. And he likes it, which is probably the most important thing. But it also is helping his clinical picture too. So.
Perfect. That's so nice.
You know, it makes me, oh, sorry, I just wanted to jump in because you know, the way you talk about that makes me think of some overlap with intermittent fasting. Because sometimes when you do, or, you know, just prolonging that overnight fast, you really allow yourself to become hungry and are thinking about your body in a different way, which I think I feel like what you're instructing us to do. So even though that maybe is a different theory, I feel like it maybe sets you up to do some of this personal assessment that we all haven't thought about, you know, with that language.
Yeah, I mean, even with something that you would consider a diet, such as intermittent fasting, and let's say that's something that you want to do, you can still be very intuitive about that approach. Maybe the article says you shouldn't have something every 6 hours, but you know, for you, 4 hours is your good spot. Like trying to get people to identify that they can actually perhaps go outside the rules a bit because they know what best nourishes them. So, yeah.
And then maybe making that connection, if today is really off, then why, right? Why am I feeling this way? What's going on? Because I think sometimes we do this deep dive when we look at other people, but don't turn it on to, you know, reflect on our own mood and thoughts and experiences. Yeah.
I think, you know, I remember the first time I did the Boston Marathon, and it was, at the first time I did it, it started at noon, I think. And so the start time was noon, but that didn't mean I was going to start until like 12:50 because I was way in the back. But you're at Athletes Village and you're sitting there and you're nervous because you're about to do something crazy that you trained very hard for, but still. And you look over and so-and-so's eating a bagel and someone else is eating something else. And you just have all of this, oh my God, I should be eating right now. You know, I should be eating my breakfast right now. Well, that guy's probably starting in a half hour and I'm starting in 3 hours. Like it's just this, we tend to think, no, but he looks like he knows what he's doing. So I should definitely do what he's doing, you know? And I remember that and thinking, wait, I need to just stick with the game plan as to what works for me. So.
That's great. And it's scary to try to find it out because I think people are afraid to go against all these years of what people have told us. Somebody is mentioning growing up with the Clean Plate Club and now trying to tune into hunger. It's hard and sometimes scary.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yep.
There's a question here. Any advice on foods that help with sleep?
There's not one magic food that's, you know, going to be helpful with sleep. I think what I would say is there's some foods that we know may interrupt with sleep. Simple timing, again, if you're having caffeine and it's, say, after 1 p.m. or 12 p.m., maybe shift that earlier because it has a long effect. So it could interrupt with sleep. As far as foods or practices that could help with sleep, I mean, I tend to like a nice herbal tea. It's more of probably a ritual that I think helps me with calming and sleep than an actual, you know, it's this nutrient in the food that is going to do it. So I would just, I don't think there's one thing per se. I mean, you could eat a whole bag of candy and it'll put you to right to sleep, but that's not the right answer.
And then you might wake up again. Same thing with alcohol, right? It might help you fall asleep, but it won't necessarily give you deep restorative sleep for a good solid 6 hours.
Yeah.
One more question here. What do you think of the Weight Watcher program?
So it's, they've made some changes, but it's still a diet, you know. It's tricky because what I feel with any of the programs like Weight Watchers, Jenny Craig, any of them, is it's a really good business model because you're on something, you have great success, then life creeps in and you're off and you gain weight. Well, then what are you going to do? You knew you were successful, so you're going to go back to it. So it's this good-looking boyfriend that will never be with you for the long term. You know, I hate to bash it, but it's dieting. It's the opposite of what we talked about today. It usually works for a short period of time. And then, like I said, something creeps in life, as it should. Life is crazy. Life is hectic. But it does make you have this conditions related to food and amounts. And it's not what I love.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, you know, some of them for sure have healthy principles and getting your vegetables and balanced meals. But I think you're right. The reason that most people don't sustain it is that it creates a diet mentality for the short term, which helps you lose weight for the short term. But it's the long-term relationship with food, which again, we talked about. That's really the key.
It comes down to the same thing. Like if I told somebody I want you to get rid of your scale, that's very fear invoking for a lot of people because, well, the only way I know how I'm doing is if I weigh myself, and that keeps me accountable. And, you know, that's the only thing that you've known. But if we try a different way with right support and guidance, then, you know, I do believe it's possible to make positive change. It's just really difficult for people because they want things like this, you know?
Yeah.
So.
Well, I think this is really wonderful advice because I think we should all be doing this reflective kind of deep dive, right? Because there's so many things how life has changed in the last 8 months that have forced us to reevaluate. And I think this is really welcome information.
Good. Yeah. I've been really enjoying working with people with it. So, and there's no right answer. That's what's great about it too. So it's more fun as a dietitian to work this way than, no, you can't have this or this or this. So.
Great. Well, maybe we can wrap up with one final question here, which is there a way to begin this style of nourishing yourself that would help us be successful?
Mm-hmm. I would start with, the books that I suggested, the intuitive eating workbook that's probably the best quick deep dive. And again, there'll be a lot of questions in there that you can, you know, little projects and stuff. I've done it. There's also a teenage, if people have teenagers, there's a really good teen version too. And also another good way to start is paying attention to how you're eating, say, dinner. Pick one meal. You know, is it at a table? Is it at a table with your computer on it? Just start being more mindful of how you are eating. And let's say dinner usually takes 7 minutes to eat. Can you stretch that out and have it take 12 or 15 or 20? This assessment of how you're doing in the first place, but without like a judgmental slant, but just okay, wow, I eat in 5 minutes. So how can I do that differently? I think just having a bit more of a glance as to what you do. And also give yourself praise for what you do well. You know, I think we're so negative that last night I had a client, when I got on the session with her, she's like, I didn't do anything that we talked about last week. And I went, really? I find that hard to believe. Let me just go through the list with you. And she had done like all of it. She just, it's that talk that we have. You know, little kids believe what you tell them, and so do we. Like, we're sponges of our, whatever. That's why I really work hard with the clients that I work with in Harlem. We're not allowed to say negative things about each other. I mean, at first it was really hard for them. These are people that were coming off of homelessness. Actually, they all were homeless. And so they're used to a very negative environment. And now they know when they call me Miss T. They're like, when Miss T is there, we can't talk like that. Like it's not even like swear words. It's just how we talk to each other and how we treat each other. Because I think as we're trying to solve these big complex world problems and we can't even just be respectful to each other in the moment, then I think that sort of stuff really matters too.
So important, and compassion for ourselves is kind of where this all comes from. So, you know, starting by honoring our bodies, we only get one, treating it with a little bit of love and respect and forgiveness, especially in these times. And, you know, we're lucky enough, most of us, to have never felt that kind of homelessness or that kind of illness, but the wisdom that you can learn from that dire situation and bring it to just day-to-day life is so important.
It's all we have. I believe it's all we have, you know, it's really, it truly is. So, and if you haven't been treating your body well for the last, whatever, how many years, it's okay. Don't dwell on the past, just step forward and keep going.
Never too late to start. Tara, thank you so much. And I also want to put in a plug for Tara's cookbook, which is amazing. It has a ton of recipes that are super easy, including my husband's famous pesto recipe that has a little almond butter and honey in it. But tons of really fun, good recipes that people would really like that. So the resources are wonderful. This is wonderful. You are wonderful. Thank you so much. And thanks to everybody for joining. We miss you. But
I miss you too.
With Zoom, who knew? We can find you again.
That's right. It's like I'm in Boston again. So thank you guys. Thanks for inviting me. And thanks for at least considering just this approach.
Thank you. The cookbook is called Real Fit Kitchen, and it's in your list of resources. Bye, Tara. Bye, everybody. Have a good week. Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you, Sarah.